Oh, right, we're back. We're back in action. Hi, I'm Teg Prakash. For anyone who doesn't know me, we're all here for various reasons. Maybe some of us aren't here for the eclipse at all, but a bunch of stuff that we have planned for today in our various studios was around the occurrence of the full moon in Libra lunar eclipse, which technically, I think the eclipse peaked just before midnight Pacific time. The exact full moon was at 12:01, so it was right after midnight. So we're in this eclipse energy, and whenever we're working with eclipses, we're working with long cycles, but also we work with shorter cycles. We have these 6-month cycles between eclipse and the next round of eclipses later in the year. And because of the way that the various points in the sky shift around, the eclipses happen in sets of 3 ultimately. Not necessarily sets of 3 eclipses, but a set of 3 eclipse seasons. So we have this where both the lunar and solar eclipse are in the Aries Libra dynamic, and in October, when the same happens, we get the Aries Libra dynamic, and then again the following April. I don't know the exact dates, so that might be off. But these happen in 3 kind of segments, right? And so we're getting into the first bit of this, and we think about this in 6-month cycles if we want to. So we have the Libra full moon as we close a door, as we kind of create this ending, this shedding of whatever is no longer necessary with the full moon in Libra specifically, and we'll talk about that. We close this door, and 6 months from now there will be a new moon in Libra eclipse. That'll be a solar eclipse, and that is the kind of opening of the new door, or everything that happens in between it is kind of affected by it. There's different ways to think about it, but ultimately the unifying factor is that you're thinking about it in cycles, that one relates to the next, and this is a constancy of human endeavor. We're not just you can create fractals out of that however you want, but we are all just iterations of a cycle, and everything that happens to us is just smaller iterations of different cycles, and so on and so forth, which is why I like astrology, because it's fun to play. The Libra full moon, so we're opening to the possibility of shedding unnecessary energy around relationships and love and beauty and appreciation and value and social contracts, also ruled by Libra. Not just not just the classic like Libran, give you flowers, you give me love and all of this. No, like a contract, like business contracts and agreements made between lovers or friends or business partners or 2 random people on the street exchanging money for illicit substances. It's all a Libra thing. It's all exchange. It's all collaboration and contract within the social realm. So full moon in Libra, we're shedding whatever isn't serving us in the sense of those relational dynamics, those interactive dynamics. We had the Pisces new moon, so we're in the Pisces cycle, to overcomplicate it. We're in Aries season, but it's a Pisces lunar cycle, and it's the eclipse and all this and that. Whatever. We're in the Pisces lunar cycle, so we're in this kind of this very expansive, what's the word I want here? It's magic. It's magic. Pisces is magic. Everything that happens within Pisces has like a sparkle to it, even if it's terrifying or weird or something that we don't want to happen. It's kind of shiny because magic. And Venus, I'm going to stop one direction for a moment. Magic of Pisces. We have the Pisces lunar cycle where we're building creatively upon that, within that kind of magical, mystical potentiality. And as we move through that, we hit Aries season, and the sun moves into Aries and kind of adds a bit of fire, a bit of active, action, a bit of action to the mystical manifestation of the Pisces lunar cycle. And then here we are at the full moon. So we're halfway through the lunar cycle. We're at the full moon, and now is the kind of winding down, the release cycle of the lunar phases. So we get to shed some of that, and we're in this active, forth-moving thing, but also we layer that in. What was I got distracted. I was going to say one thing, and then I got distracted by my own self. Good gracious. This is, hi, I'm a Pisces. Nebulous some days. Yes, so the magic of Pisces is one element of it. The nebulous, kind of smoky unsureness is another end of it. Then we move into Aries season, and our energy, our vital force, pulls us into a state of action and doing and passion and really just fun. It's fun. If it's not fun, why are we doing it? But we're still in that bit of magic in the realm of things. And then we get into the full moon, the eclipse, where we're shedding, but the eclipse is setting a new frequency. It's setting off a new cycle, a new relational cycle in particular. Right, I was going to say Venus, the planet which rules this lunar moment. Venus rules the sign of Libra. So it's interacting with, it's affecting directly this eclipse and this full moon, and the next 2 weeks of the lunar cycle, the last 2 weeks of the Pisces lunar cycle. I'm layering all kinds of shit on here. It's fun, but if you have any questions at any point, or you're like, hey, that doesn't make sense, let me know. So the Pisces lunar cycle, last 2 weeks of it are ruled by this Venusian energy. Venus is in Pisces. Its favorite place to be, actually. It rules 2 signs, but a planet's rulership is not necessarily its exaltation. Its exaltation being the place where it's most fully manifested. So the Venusian energy of love and abundance and value and cooperation and connectivity finds itself most expressed in Pisces. And so we have Venus moving through its exaltation currently. It's there for a little while longer, and it's a very sweet time. But we also have, other things telling us to be less sweet, Aries and otherwise. Venus rules this eclipse. And so we get a very powerful call to shed, the full moon, shed the things that have hindered the kind of magical manifestation process of our Pisces new moon, shed the things that have created imbalances and dysregulation within our relational dynamics, specifically those that are built out of love, because Venus is in Pisces. I know I said it also, the regular social contracts and business things, but Venus in Pisces is not concerned about whether or not my dollars equal your product. It doesn't care. It's all love. It's agape. It's the biblical form of unadulterated, untrammeled love of God, basically. That's what it is, Venus in Pisces. And so it doesn't care about the whatever worldly monies and things. So we get this focus on shedding the things that have gotten in the way of or are no longer serving those loving interactions, those relationships with the people that are close to us, the random relationships that we have for 30 seconds with a person on a bus or at a stoplight or in the street somewhere, the interactions that we don't expect but still somehow radiate this luscious wonderfulness. So we get the things that stop us from doing that, which is almost everything, because that's a really hard frequency to actually like master and uphold, which is why we have very few people in the world that are considered like saints. Basically, someone who holds that frequency at all times is a saint. We get Mother Teresa and the rest of them. They're only acting out of love, and they're only being in love, and they're only interacting with love, and it's incredible. Anyhow, so we try to be in that frequency occasionally, and the more we are, the more, well, the sweeter life is. That's all. So we're called to release some of the things that get in the way of that. That's particularly important now, because there's all sorts of reasons and calls to be separated and disjointed from one another, whether it's like the veil that is social media or virtual reality, or simply removing yourself from the world altogether because everything you need can be delivered to your door. These are the things that stop us from being in that frequency, more so now than ever. So we want to shed the things that call us away from that as much as possible, and this creates a different dynamic with every relationship, because we're not working in business to see how much we can take from them, because that's how I get what I want. We're working in a way that is like, how is what I'm doing contributing to them, thereby contributing to the whole, which is inclusive of me. It's a very like, it's not the like martyrdom and self-sacrifice. That's the shadow side of it. The understanding that everything you're doing is affecting other people, and what they're doing is affecting you. So if you affect them positively, everything, it circles back. That's all it is. And that works. Business relationships, loving relationships, especially in romantic relationships, you're like, if you're not actually devoting yourself to like someone else's betterment, like supporting their own journey into being better, not tricking yourself into thinking that you're making them better, but supporting their journey into better, then you haven't reached the fullness of the relationship. That's all. I'm not going to say it's necessarily not going to work, or it's a relationship that shouldn't happen. But if you aim to that, if you aim toward that, then you're aiming toward a fuller expression of the relationship, and that's just more satisfying. Okay, other things playing with this lovely wonderfulness. Again, it's an eclipse cycle. So we have this eclipse, which happened several hours ago, 12 and some change hours ago. And the solar eclipse, which happens on the 8th, happens on April 8th. And that happens in the sign of Aries. As the new moon happens, the moon moves between the earth and the sun, and lo and behold, the gods of old are born again. This is where like old mythology comes from. It's like, what is that, and why did it take away God? It's like that's the eclipse, basically. That was the way of looking at it, because either the sun or the moon or both were gods, and suddenly they were gone, and so these were big days. I did it again. I got distracted again. So we have the solar eclipse on the 8th, which brings us into a more Aries focused thing. But for now, we're working with the polarity either way. The Aries and Libra things that they share is the development of self and other. It's like if you're an Aries, or you're I won't say that if you're an Aries, if you're predisposed toward Aries tendencies in relationships, then you might have to overcome some very serious selfishness, or just an obliviousness to the needs of another person. It's not even selfishness per se. It's like, I believe to be selfish is to be aware of another's needs and to not care about them. That's selfish. It's not necessarily selfish to just not understand that the other person has needs. It's like, if they haven't said anything, how do you know, right? Anyway, Aries is very self-centric, which is necessary. It's a necessary part of the human development. And we all have some element of Aries within our charts. Libra is other. It's very other-centric. It's trying to learn how to be in the world with other people, learning how to be with other people. And the shadow of that is the self, the removal of self. It's like, I no longer, as long as everyone around me is good, then everything's fine. And that can be at whatever cost to me. As long as everyone around me is fine. It's the forgiving and constantly giving, and the sweet and polite and always just kind of brushing off the needs of self. So Aries and Libra are working with two ends of that spectrum. They're ultimately the same sign. They're just born with a different part of the polarity. So we work with these Aries and Libra eclipses in that sense. We're working with self and other. It's like, how is my relationship to other people affecting me? How are they affecting me? How is my relationship to myself affecting other people? And obviously myself. And the eclipses are powerful windows of time where it's a really sometimes very unprovoked, but unexpected sometimes, very much more than your average. Things just move, they shift. People, get suddenly bounced out of jobs or relationships, or into jobs or relationships, or, they get that house that they've been trying to get, or suddenly, someone just walks back into their life that they thought was gone forever, or someone leaves forever. The planet or the relationship or whatever. Things move very quickly. These are just big examples, but things move very rapidly within these windows, and the results kind of play out over the 6-month cycle, and then you evolve into truly the full result over the next 9 years as the whole big long cycle happens. But that's too far ahead. I'm caffeinated. That's what it is. I'm caffeinated, and I did some yoga, and it was really good yoga. So we're here. I'm just bouncing around. I hope you're following. I hope you're here with it. And if again, stop me. Actually, interrupt me if you need to. The Aries-Libra dynamic, the self and other. We're developing that. Lots of things can shift that will be connected to that, and you can allow yourself to actually be in a space of like, oh, how does this affect my self-other dynamic? Ask yourself that as things happen that create a lot of turmoil or emotional dysregulation or whatever shift happens that is noticeable. Ask yourself, all right, how can I apply this? How does this apply to the self and other dynamic that I'm trying to evolve and work with? Things directly connected to this, which actually adds a really big firecracker to the bunch. Pluto. We have the sun and moon. Sun is in Aries, moon is in Libra. Pluto, the planet of transformation, death, and change, as in the sense of like what actually changes over the long term. Pluto, it forces change. It brings the awareness of the things that need to change. So we have, again, a lot of opportunity in this to be very acutely aware of what needs to shift and how to shift it, and or maybe just what is shifting. And so Pluto brings that. It's harmonized. It's in harmony with the moon, which is a good thing. Pluto in challenge is, well, it's challenging. Pluto in harmony with something is still challenging, but at least it's like, what's a good analogy? Okay, so being a little kid, I imagine almost everyone like jumped up and grabbed onto tree branches and hung on them or swung on them or whatever. You know that one that like the bark was really rough and you swing and your hands still turn and it really, you just don't want to do it again? That's Pluto in a challenge, but like scaled up to cosmic level proportions. Pluto in harmony is like, well, it's like smoother tree bark. That's all. It's there. It's still hard to do when you're a little kid and your hands are tiny and the tree branch is too big. But you do it and you transform as a result, either by hitting your head on the ground or scraping your hands or whatever. It doesn't matter. You're going to change and you can't really avoid it. I'm going to try and develop that analogy better, but it works for now. Pluto, harmony, forcing change. It's a slow-moving planet. It's only in the very first part of Aquarius, and it hasn't been in this first part of Aquarius for like 250 years. So it's very slow. It's very slow. That adds an element of the social dynamic. So the collective consciousness. Aquarius is that consciousness that is somewhere above our consciousness. It's like us, and then the collective consciousness, or what did he call it? The superego? Was that the superconscious? Somewhere up here above human conscious, and I would assume you can't really put levels to it, but somewhere between absolute God consciousness and human consciousness, there's this collective consciousness. We're all interwoven and penetrating in our thoughts and actions and psychological quirks. It's all mixing together. It's fun. And Aquarius is that collective consciousness. So Pluto shifting into the collective consciousness is like suddenly realizing that AI is based on us and showing us all of our weirdest and darkest thoughts and things, and also helping us realize that, like, oh, it's not just one person, it's not just me that thinks these weird thoughts, it's actually everybody, and we all get to understand that finally. When it was Pluto and Scorpio, it was like, yes, we all have dark thoughts. We're all going to go and talk to one person about it. Nobody's going to share it with anybody else. That's the like therapy generation. The Pluto and Aquarius vibe is more like, oh, we have all of these dark thoughts, and some of them don't need to exist anymore. And it's not so much that like the human is looking at it and thinking, oh, I didn't know everybody else had this thought. It's less that, like, it pops up that way, but it's more like, oh, this is a thread of consciousness throughout the whole of society. We need to address that. We need to reconcile with that. We need to accept and understand that exists in our human nature. Without understanding it, it cannot be shifted into something new. So this is one of those moments that's like triggering that Pluto framework, because the slow planets create a kind of lower level foundation for everything else to happen on top of. So these eclipses are happening above the level of different movements in the sky. So we have the level of transformation of the collective consciousness, the revelation, first revelation, then transformation. Revelation of, oh shit, we're weird. We are dramatically weird. Nobody understood it until, whatever, the internet started it, and then we're kind of developing into it. It's becoming really salient now because AI is doing weird shit. And it's very revealing to who we are. This is one of those moments that kicks some of that energy into overdrive, and we get to really see what happens in terms of how people are interacting and affecting that collective shift over the next 6 months. But specifically, the things that occur right here, these next 2 weeks. I've talked a lot. There's one more thing. Mercury retrograde starts in the middle of this, which is fantastic. I think this would be way too accelerated and weird and wild if not for Mercury retrograde starting. So it stations retrograde on the 1st. I believe on the 1st. I might be wrong about that, but the 1st of April, precisely halfway in between the lunar eclipse and the solar eclipse. Thank God. Thank God. Everybody freaks out about Mercury retrograde, but it's like it slows us down enough that the mind is able to process all of the craziness that's happening, especially during crazy times like eclipse seasons. But the Mercury faculty is constantly moving. We're not always conscious of the movements that are happening because they're happening so quickly, one after another after another. We don't have any time to like consciously process them. Mercury retrograde is that time where we look back on the last little while and we're like, okay, what of this did I not actually sift through? What do I need to pick out of this recent time stream, and how do I use that to my benefit? It's a very meditative space. It's like what you're saying may not precisely reach the other person in the way that you think, which is a good practice to understand that. To play with that, and oh dear, I can't remember his name. He was another psychologist, psychiatrist. He's the one that developed the active listening process, the act of like you listen to someone speak and then you kind of summarize and repeat it back to them, and that's a good way to exchange information anytime, but especially during Mercury retrograde. It's like that ensures that what you're saying is reaching them in a way that you understand it and they understand it, and vice versa. So if you want to play with that, have a gas. Let me know how it goes. Mercury retrograde, slowing us down enough so that these wild transformations happening about the world are navigable and processable, can be processed. Processable, I don't think is a word. And we just do better with it. I'm excited for it. I feel like there's something else, but whatever. We're just gonna roll. Thoughts, questions, concerns, curiosities? No thoughts, questions, concerns, or curiosities. All right, thank you. Technically that's a thought, so thank you. All right, that's it. That's our full moon in Libra lunar eclipse. I'll be back for the solar eclipse in a couple of weeks, and obviously always here Mondays for the astrology Kundalini yoga kind of mashup class. So I'll be here for that next week, and I'll probably make it something to do with Mercury retrograde, because that's the day. All right, Satnam, Godspeed, good luck, and enjoy all of the weird. I tried to turn it off before I stopped talking.